Hey, amazing viewers! It's your buddy Chronos, and guess what? We're back with another electrifying episode of What If Deku Had the Gamer Powers? Part 4 is here, and I can promise you, it's going to be a wild ride. So grab your snacks, hit that like button, and prepare for a mind-bending adventure you won't find anywhere else. But before we jump in, I need to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude for your unwavering support. Your enthusiasm fuels our creativity, and it's what keeps this channel going. So, if you're ready to explore uncharted territories of heroism and gaming, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. Let's make this video epic together. Chapter 18. I did my homework. I ate dinner. I finished my homework. And the whole time, All Might's words echoed through my head. Think about what you did well, and what you could have done better. It would be easy to say that we won, and All Might called me the MVP. So I could say that I did it all well. But really, what had I done? I took out my phone and hit the third number, after home and mom. Hi, Zaku. Sue answered after 2 rings. She smiled at me and I could see her room behind her. Hi, Sue. I responded with my own grin. How are you? Good, she answered. And how are you? I'm good too, I told her. But well, I have been doing a lot of thinking about today. And that is why I called. Not that I didn't just want to talk to you. I wanted that too. She looked amused. So what's up? Well, because of what All Might said, I was second-guessing what I did. Was it really right to trap you like that? I know the rules allowed it, but would it have worked in the real world? If it had been real handcuffs, maybe you would have been able to slip out or break them. Not if they had been anti-villain handcuffs. She cut me off to remind me. If Endeavor can't melt them without seriously hurting himself, and All Might needs a few minutes to break them, then someone like me would never have had a chance to get out of them. Probably. I hedged, thinking about her abilities. But if it had been the real world, or really anyone other than you, I wouldn't have known that would work. Also, I think I owe you an apology. You already apologized, she pointed out. And I told you didn't need to. Not for trapping and leaving you. I shook my head. Because if you hadn't been fighting me, you would likely have done better. When you tagged me at the beginning, I got a paralyzed resistance skill. So if it had been someone else, you might have stopped them right then and there. Ribbit, she frowned at me. That's interesting. I thought Gamer's body already made you immune to that. No. I pivoted my head again. That's Gamer's mind and mental type statuses. Gamer's body doesn't say that it gives me any resistance to paralysis, or poison, or anything like that. Then I grinned sheepishly. I was actually thinking of asking you to use your oils on me sometimes, to help me build up resistance skills. Like holding your hand? She prompted, a sparkle in her eyes. Or maybe giving you a back rub? That might not be too bad. I agreed, Gamer's mind keeping the blush out of my cheeks. Well, since we are talking about class. She decided to stop teasing me. Or was it flirting? Do you have any ideas about what I could have done better? I considered her question for a moment. Well, I was wondering why you sparred with me. I told her. I would have expected you to cling to the walls or ceiling outside of my range. Then you could have smacked me around with your tongue. I didn't think of that, she admitted. After the initial attack, I was in melee range, and I got caught up in that. Also, I added another light bulb later. I know your oils don't do anything to your skin. But what if you ingest them? Ingest them? She prompted, confused. I was thinking you could coat your tongue with your oils. Then you could poison or paralyze opponents from further away. I don't know. She frowned. That sounds kind of weird. Licking my hands a bunch would probably make me look like a villain. Besides, I don't know if it would work. Yeah, I thought that too. That it might look funny, and your saliva might disrupt the oils. Again, assuming doing that didn't just end up paralyzing you. What if you collected the oil another way? Like in some of those reusable water balloons? That could work. She assumed her thinking pose. And do you have any ideas for me? I asked. Well, she tilted her head a bit further. I didn't get to see the end, because I was stuck. But you got trapped by the glue, right? I'm surprised it could get to you. Your tactile TK acts like armor, right? It was liquid, I explained. And a lot of it. It just kind of seeped through. So maybe I should work on that. Sounds like a good idea to me. She agreed. And maybe I will see if my oil knocks me out if I lick it. You don't have to, I said. It was just a silly idea I had. But it may be good to know, just in case I ever get exposed some other way. That's true. I nodded. Nei-chan. Satsuki's voice came from outside Tsu's phone's camera's range. Can you help me dry my hair? Just a minute, Tsu answered. Then she looked back at me and said regretfully, I have to go. See you tomorrow? Definitely, I told her. Good night, Tsu. Good night, Izuku. Mom, I'm going to take a bath. I called out as soon as we disconnected. All right, she answered. I went into the bathroom and filled the tub up, but only halfway. I turned the heater on for the water, and higher than normal. I hoped that would make it more difficult. After cleaning myself, I stepped gingerly into the tub. It was long enough that, even if I laid flat across the bottom, I still would have had at least 20 centimeters to spare. The water was painfully hot, but not enough to scald me. I sat down at one end of the tub, and then got to work. I activated Telekinetic Rampart. It created a wall at the far end of the tub. Then I pulled it closer, scraping the water towards this end until it was almost up to the rim and spilling over. Next I activated Telekinetic Armor, trying to push the water as far from my skin as I could. Re-enable all alerts, I instructed. Water leaks, slips, invades. It is hard to hold back. +1 determination, Telekinetic Rampart skill improved, LVL 5. Some of the liquid seeped though, splashing my chest. I clenched my fists and pushed it back away. Then it spread under the wall. I tried to scoop it up with my regular TK. The water rippled slightly, but I couldn't lift it. Or even move it. I dropped the wall, and then recreated it, pulling the water back towards me again. I tried to ponder the difference. TK Rampart seemed to create a hard barrier, so it made sense that it would not have the same effect on water. But what was the difference between TK Armor, that it could push the water away from me, and Telekinesis, which could not lift or push the liquid? Neither one seemed solid. Unfortunately, I was already tired, and the heat made it harder to concentrate. But I didn't miss the next alert. Heat resistance skill unlock, condition 1/3 met. That's a new one, I murmured. By the end of my bath, TK Armor had gone from level 11 to level 16, and TK Rampart from 4 to 12. Plus 2 more bumps of determination, putting me right on the cusp of 50 points and a bonus talent. And also 2 each for endurance and intuition. Unfortunately, halfway through I realized the heat was sapping my energy in terms of stamina, as well as my HP. So I turned off the heater. And I didn't really come up with any answers to the differences in my TK powers, or what else I needed to do to unlock heat resistance. Which was too bad, because it might have helped me figure out cold resistance for Tsu. The early part of Tuesday's morning lessons seemed to fly by. Everyone was anticipating the chance to review the matches. Both our own, and our classmates. Some of my classmates were eager, while the rest of us had more of a nervous sort of anticipation. All right, Aizawa-sensei looked at us sharply. Before all of you get your chance, there are 2 specific performances I want to go over first. Kirishima. The red-haired boy straightened in his chair. Your plan to rile up Shishido-kun and have him destroy the bomb was inspired, perfectly executed, and earned you the MVP. Aizawa told him, All Might nodding along. Kirishima started to smile. Don't ever do it again. Eraserhead added quickly and sharply. Sensei? Kirishima sounded surprised. The disqualification by destroying the bomb was to prevent either team from taking the easy way out, our teacher explained. While using that against the other team in a game is all well and good, but you can't count on something like that working in the real world. If it was a real bomb, and that would have set it off. Yanagi-chan could have set it off moving it like she did. I glanced around. Yaoyorozu-sen and Ami both appeared to know exactly what Aizawa-sensei was talking about. Mikoto was smirking. Ida-san and Kota-san were both taking notes. Everyone else just seemed to be considering the lecture. Second, Aizawa-sensei continued. While getting your opponent to lose control is a tried and true battle strategy, you have to make sure you know your opponent before you use it. Or at least that there won't be collateral damage if you are wrong. You got a quick 1-minute explanation from someone who has known him for 2 weeks and only seen him use his quirk in a game. That does not qualify. What if, instead of snapping him out of it, breaking the bomb had made him more angry? What if he continued to grow larger and stronger? What if he had a hybrid quirk and literally exploded in rage? Midoriya. Aizawa-sensei suddenly shifted focus to me. And Gamer's mind was the only thing keeping me from trembling. You caught one of Azuri's wrists and taped her to a wall, and then ran off. He glared at me. I braced myself. Well done, he concluded gruffly. I will do better next. I started. Then I blinked and parroted Kirishima. Sensei? Unlike most anyone else here, he said, you and Azuri-chan do know each other. You had every reason to believe that would hold. And not every villain you fight will be a mystery. Villains get away. And when they do, they usually come back. There is nothing wrong with exploiting that knowledge, if it is solid and actionable. But more importantly, you did what you needed to escape and return to your mission, while reasonably making sure she couldn't attack you from behind. Like Mike-sensei said in the exam, Ami murmured, but the class was quiet enough that her voice carried. Catching a thief when you are trying to save a child is not a win. Exactly. Eraserhead looked mildly impressed. Too many heroes get too caught up in fighting and capturing the villain, and forget about their surroundings, civilians, or their original mission. Even though the heroes could win this lesson by taking out both villains, it's not a particularly rational solution. Just because they can't interfere anymore, doesn't mean you would be able to find and disable their weapon in time. That is something you all need to keep in mind. Okay. All Might boomed the word in English, though I expected everyone knew what it meant. Now that we have got that out of the way, he continued, switching back to Japanese, let's see what everyone has come up with. In seat order, I want each of you to identify something you did well, something you did poorly, or a mistake you made, and finally, what you intend to do to improve based on either or both of those. After your self-assessment, we will have a few minutes for the rest of your classmates to ask questions or offer brief, constructive comments. All Might put a lot of emphasis on the word constructive. I didn't really think anyone would do otherwise. I mean, Todoroki-san was a bit cold. Ida-san was strict and somewhat hasty. Ashido-san seemed to sometimes speak without thinking. Mikoto could be a bit harsh. Okay, maybe the reminder wasn't the worst idea. Go ahead, Aoyama-kun, Aizawa-sensei prompted. What I did well, Aoyama-san declared regally, was my teamwork. I lent my partner my quirk, I followed his plan. I participated, even though I thought he was going overboard. What I do poorly was ultimately getting caught up in the excitement and overusing my quirk, which, in turn, comes from my desire not to step out from under my sister's shadow. Why do you feel you are overshadowed by your sister? Aizawa-sensei prompted, more gently than I had heard him speak before. Her quirk is similar to mine, but far superior, Aoyama explained. She shoots the same beam, but from the tips of her pointer fingers. Her beams, even together, are weaker. But she can shoot 2 targets at once. She can aim more easily. And because the beams are weaker and come from her fingers, she can shoot more before it starts to hurt her. I even heard she has even learned to make her lasers curve slightly. You heard? I mused. He nodded. Minako, she went to Hero School in London, living with our grandmama. She graduates in 2 months, and already has a year-long sidekick position lined up in the UK, after which she may return to Japan. And then, how do you intend to overcome that? All Might prompted carefully. I am not sure. The blonde boy's normal royal aura faded at the admission. You may want to talk to Hound Dog Sensei, Aizawa suggested. Then he looked at the rest of us. And some eyes turned my way. Well, what's your workout routine? Kirishima-san immediately asked, half flexing his right arm. Aoyama-san looked at him like he was speaking like he was speaking Hindi. Your belt, I asked. It holds back your laser, right? And also lets it out. Do you know how it works? Maybe the support staff could find a way to use it to split the beam up. It was finally my turn. What did I do well? I repeated the question. Hearing what everyone else had said, had me double and triple guessing myself. Well, I suppose I worked well with Subiraba-san, buying him a chance to sneak past Tsuyu, I said, and then also distracting Bando-san. And I did okay fighting Tsuyu too, though like she suggested, part of that was because she didn't think to use some of her powers. As for what I did badly, I continued, I guess if taking Aizawa-sensei's words into consideration, the biggest mistake was that I got caught. Though, thinking back, I probably could have used Tsuyu's trap against her if I hadn't been in such a hurry. As for what I am doing about it, since the liquid glue was able to overwhelm my defenses, I started practicing using them against water yesterday. And does anyone have anything for Midoriya-kun? Aizawa-sensei asked blandly, gesturing at Kirishima. What is your workout routine? And your diet? The redhead asked. I was not surprised, since he had asked all of the guys and most of the girls about how they ate and exercised. Well, for breakfast I usually have cereal and fruit on weekdays, and a more traditional Japanese breakfast on the weekends. For dinner, mostly it is just whatever my mom cooks, depending on what we are in the mood for and what is on sale at the market. Though she does make this really good pork cutlet katsudon, with bacon and ham, too. I don't really have a workout routine, I continued, especially since classes started here. Before that, Sue and I used to go to the park. And we just did whatever we felt like, martial arts or parkour or target practice. Sometimes yoga or swimming. Though I did jog almost every day, and wear exercise weights the whole time. How much weight? Aizawa-sensei asked. 15 kilograms on each arm and leg, I told him, and another 25 on my vest. And you were talking about martial arts yesterday with Kendo-san, Ojiro-san said. Perhaps you would be willing to tell us who your master is? Oh, I don't have one, I admitted. I learned from manuals. And there was those old American film, where the main character worked in a theater and learned kung fu by mimicking movies. I don't have a giant projection screen, but I still tried to do the same thing. You learned all of that from books and movies? He prompted incredulously. Mostly. That and practice. Is that even possible? Ojiro-san didn't seem to believe me. I wasn't that surprised. It wasn't like I could tell him about my skill points. Well, someone had to come up with the moves in the first place, right? Ciro mused. At least these two had some references to go off. Actually, Sue pointed out, I didn't read any of the books and only watched some of the movies. Izuku taught me most of what I know. Besides most of the moves tailored to my quirk. So, are you really using your telekinesis to manipulate your muscles? Hagakure-san demanded. I frowned at her. I'm not sure what you mean, I told her. I mean, I do use it to reinforce and strengthen myself. Is that what you mean? No, like using your power to actually change your muscles, she said. Muscles get stronger when they get damaged and healed, right? So you could do that directly with your powers. Whoa, that sounds really dangerous. My eyes widened as I thought about that. I wouldn't be able to see what I am doing, and don't have that fine of control to work on individual cells. It might be possible, but I'm definitely not there yet. I noticed more than a few of my classmates looked disappointed at that. Specific classmates. So, no enhancing massages, Ochako whispered to Ami in relief, after class let out and most of the others left. Not yet, the Bluette agreed gratefully. However, going around like this feels sneaky and disingenuous. What are you thinking? Ochako asked. Something I learned from a story I read. The direct approach. Sue, Cassandra, and I went to All Might's office after classes let out. Mom was going into the office today. We decided to save money on the train, and we would just let her be pulled into the dungeon when we entered. For today, All Might took charge once we were inside his reflection. I was hoping we would be able to defeat another 15 opponents. We only beat 5 last time, Mom reminded him cautiously. True, Miss Inko, he agreed. But we are also stronger than last time. And thanks to leveling up and putting points into my endurance, I can hold this form longer now. To be honest, since we cleared that pencil, I find myself very curious to see what the bonus will be for defeating 20 enemies in my dungeon. We will see how it goes, Mom said one last time. Agreed, All Might agreed. Though if they are all like this, we might be able to go through more than 15. All Might was looking at the villain who had just emerged. He was barely taller than me, and pudgy, with stringy black hair. Who is that Izuku? Tsuya asked. I don't recognize him, I said, disappointed in myself. I'm not surprised, All Might comforted me. Even I don't know his name. He was one of the first criminals I stopped when I returned to Japan. A petty thief, with a minor kinetic absorption quirk. The mook saw us, growled incoherently, and charged. In the process, he drew a knife. My mom gestured at him, and the next second, she was holding said knife. Gundor smash! I shouted, following it up with, Analyze. Anonymous crook. No one remembers him. In bad shape. But his quirk resists physical damage. Level 70. Health 768/768. Stamina 640/640. Then the sharpened blade of Ki hit him. The attack cut right through his defense, and he lost almost a fifth of his HP. The crook stopped and looked at his empty hand, and then at the wound across his belly. He glared at us, and took out a taser. My mom actually rolled her eyes, and then disarmed him again. Asgard smash! This time I hit him with the blunt attack of Ki blast. It did about the same damage to him. How was that different from your Chicago smash? All Might asked, as the mook froze nervously. After I named my Ki slice attack, I said sheepishly, I decided I should consider renaming the other ones. To be a little more unique. Maybe you should finish this guy off, Tsuya said, as the crook decided to bolt. Since it will be tough for the rest of us. I was going to test my telekinetic attack. We had cleared 14 enemies, and were still in pretty good shape. My energy was just under half, and we had no major injuries. Sue, Cassandra, and I each gained 3 levels, Mom gained 2, and All Might gained 1. But since we finished the doppelganger of Venom Chainsaw, the campus around us had been very quiet. I was thinking, Sue suddenly said. When we first entered All Might's dungeon, it said there was already a mid-boss spawned, right? So why haven't we run into him or her or it yet? Actually, an unfamiliar and soft voice said, I've been watching you the whole time. We all jumped as a figure emerged from All Might's shadow. He was of average height, and skinny. Skinny to the point he almost looked ill. Cassandra appeared to be as Jared as I was, as neither of our respective powers had detected him. Analyze. First holder. Mysterious figure with a deep connection to Tashinori Yagi, even though the two have never met. Level 81. Health 1069/1069. Stamina 1503/903. Psions, 2677/2051. His stamina and psions were above their maximum values. Was that some sort of factor of his quirk? First Holder held up his hands, openly and palms forward, the universal gesture for peaceful intent. I remembered the dojo leader from the Kung Fu book, and relaxed. It seemed like not all enemies are inherently or immediately hostile. I don't mean you any harm, he admitted. In fact, I would say I am here to help you, Yagi-kun. Mom and Sue both frowned at the familiar form of address, especially given the mid-boss looked to be about 10 years younger than All Might. Who are you? The symbol of peace asked. The mid-boss only inclined his head towards me. He's called First Holder, I told All Might, who looked at me, then at the mid-boss in obvious shock. The specter just smiled kindly and nodded. So then, we have to fight you, All Might said doubtfully. No. First Holder shook his head. Frankly, I am no match for Yagi-kun. Rather, I am interested in the potential of those two, and would request a chance to spar with them. The mysterious man gestured at Cassandra, then at me. Potential? All Might Sensei asked. As in? First Holder bobbed his head again. Interesting. All Might suddenly boomed, slipping back into his hero voice. Of course, it is up to them. He didn't look dangerous, yet there was something setting my nerves on edge. Maybe it was how All Might reacted. I glanced over at Cassandra, who seemed hesitant as well. She met my eyes and then nodded. I returned the gesture. We will do it, I told him. Then we will watch. All Might agreed. Though if things get out of hand, I will step in. His tone made all of us shiver, even though it was directed at our enemy. First Holder only smiled and inclined his head again. But then in the meantime, Yagi-sensei's voice softened, and he began to let off steam, literally. I will take a chance to rest. He, Mom, and Sue all moved off to the side, but kept watching us closely. It wasn't a huge surprise. All Might was a veteran hero, and while he seemed to trust this mid-boss, Mom and Sue had little reason to do so. Other than trusting the symbol of peace, I guess. Cassandra and I faced off against First Holder. We all dropped into fighting stances. Cassandra and I had only fought together 3 times now. More if you count individual battles or the last round of lions and gazelles. Either way, I was starting to get an idea of her styles. She was poised to take on a fast opponent. She thought this First Holder would be a quicker and more controlled adversary. Our opponent's footwork said he was ready to face multiple enemies. But it was also an aggressive stance. I got ready for a strong foe. I wasn't sure why at first, given his appearance. But maybe that was it? He reminded me of All Might. Not in his face or coloring, or anything like that. No, his slender, emaciated figure was like how Yagi Tashinori looked right now. Was that their connection? Was this First Holder inflicted with the same unusual poisoning as our teacher? Had they both fought the same villain? First Holder began to glow with a soft white light. Then he pushed off. He shot at Cassandra with a speed that would have impressed Ida-san. She was already preparing to dodge. Drive 3! I bumped my TK aura up to the next level, and dashed forward to intercept him. His fist was aimed at Cassandra's chin. She twisted her head and shoulders outside his path. She also pushed his arm further away with both of her palms. I arrived an instant later, launching a jumping roundhouse kick at his left shoulder. Or maybe his head, if Cassandra forced him close enough to me. She didn't. In fact, her whole weight and strength on his extended right arm barely budged it. And didn't move the rest of him at all. He raised his left, catching my leg on his bicep and wrist. I was stronger than Cassandra with Drive 3, and I didn't move him either. I only shaved off a few points from his health. And it felt harder than kicking one of the redwoods in Indoro. He flexed slightly, throwing both of us back. We had technically already lost our sparring match with First Holder 6 times over. That was how many lethal or incapacitating blows he would have landed on Cassandra, had he not stopped each one before it hit. Even then, just the force of his punches and kicks was enough to chip away at our HP. Oh, and me? I would have been taken out 8 times. He wasn't as good as us. In terms of pure martial arts skill, I was a few steps ahead of him, and Cassandra was leaps and bounds ahead of either one of us. But his physical abilities far outstripped ours, and our attacks, while more frequently successful, did a lot less damage. From what I had seen in All Might's dungeon, having a large level gap seemed to translate into some automatic damage reduction. I hope that didn't also apply in the real world. On the plus side, as the spar dragged on, my physical abilities and martial arts skills were improving at a steady clip. You two should stop holding back. First Holder chided us. I am not a real person. I am a product of Midoriya-san's power and Yagi-kun's soul. And frankly, you won't beat me like this. Keep this up much longer, and I will knock you both out. You need to use all the weapons at your disposal. I suddenly stopped and stepped back, asking, May we have a moment? First Holder looked almost relieved, and nodded. Cassandra, do you know any weapon styles? I asked. /yes/ she answered, /many, though I don't like to use most of them, and don't have any weapons, / What about this? I asked. Can you use this? I opened my inventory, and took out the purple heart tonfa. I held it out to her. Cassandra's eyes widened as she took the weapon. She held it, and spun it experimentally. Then went through a series of quick forms, her amazement steadily growing. Can I borrow this? She asked. I looked over at Tsu and Mom, who signaled their understanding and agreement. You can have it, I told her. In fact, I think I was given that to give to you. Are you ready? First Holder prompted kindly. No, one more thing, I answered. Drive 4. Key reinforcement, strength and quickness. Izuku, Mom chided me worriedly. I have to learn to do this, I told her. When better than here and now, against an obviously superior opponent, who is not trying to kill me. My arms and legs creaked with every move. But I wasn't attacking, or pushing myself. Yet. So I wasn't taking damage. Yet. Using them together, my strength and speed were not quite double what they had been with just Drive 3. I hoped it would be enough. Round 2. Yagi-sensei boomed in his hero voice, despite still being in his true form. Fight! I went first this time. Charged straight for him. Rather than the karate or kung fu I had been focusing on, I switched to boxing. 2 quick right jabs to his shoulder, then a hard left cross to his chin. -5 health. It hurt me, but all 3 hit, and more importantly, took a 53 points off of his health. First Holder. Health, 702/1069. Stamina, 811/903. Psions, 2677/2051. I dropped and slid to the side. I peppered his left side with jabs and feints, keeping him off balance. Cassandra moved into the gap. His counter was directed at her, but the spinning bludgeon punished him for it, without losing any of its durability in return. Cassandra stabbed the short end of the tonfa into his gut, and then whirled it into the shoulder I had been pounding. First Holder. Health, 643/1069. Stamina, 810/903. Psions, 2677/2051. Okay. He stopped, holding up his hands like when we had first met him. First Holder. Health, 88/1069. Stamina, 412/903. Psions, 2674/2051. I let out a ragged breath and mumbled. Drive 2. Deactivate KI reinforcement. I was down under a quarter health now, mostly my own fault. And I still didn't feel like I was getting a handle on using Ki and TK together. Well done, he said. Then he looked at All Might, and continued. Either one would be a good choice. Kane-san's agility and control are something that is sorely lacking. And Midoriya-san's power. His self-healing would also be a good gain, and I would be very curious to see how the gamer fits with it. All Might considered that thoughtfully. The rest of us just looked confused. Well then, I wish you all good luck, First Holder said, vanishing in a cloud of steam. But not without leaving something behind. There was a pile of 5 scrolls. And under them, a second tonfa. It was purple heart and blackened titanium, like the first one. But this one, the metal had a pattern of waves, instead of flames. I think we can all agree where this goes, Karo. Tsuyu picked up the weapon and handed it to Cassandra. The mute girl ran the paired weapons through a quick set of moves, and then thanked us. Are these what you mentioned before? All Might asked. Analyze. Scroll of Physical Resistance Tashinori Yagi. A rare drop usually only found in true skill books from 5, Tiza. But it appears Ofa was able to break the rules. Acts as a skill book for the bonded individual. Durability, 1/1. Quality, 0/7. Cannot be strengthened. Yes, they are skill scrolls, I agreed. One for each of us. I wondered what second bit of garbled text Ofa was. Was it something related to All Might, or First Holder? Or maybe something tied to me? I guess it didn't really matter, until the gamer decided to stop concealing it. I handed each scroll to its respective owner. Tsu, Mom, and I didn't hesitate to use ours. Skill book used. Physical resistance skill improved, LVL 30. Cassandra tucked her new toys into her belt, and then used the scroll. Her face twisted up like she had bitten an especially sour lemon. When All Might used the item, he was surrounded by a swirl of light. Unlike the rest of us, he didn't seem to experience any discomfort. This is different, he said, showing us his alert screen. Skill book used. Source Synergy Stipend spent. Skill Physical Resistance unlocked, LVL 2. The gamer does seem to like alliteration. I sighed. I'm more curious about the fact that All Might didn't already have physical resistance, Tsu pointed out. Well, when I transform into my muscle form, Yagi-sensei explained, I have bonus skill called Global Resistance instead. But I would have thought you have been hit enough to unlock physical resistance, she pressed. Maybe having global resistance kept those hits from counting towards physical resistance, Mom suggested. Well, you didn't have physical resistance either, Tsu, I reminded her. And you've definitely taken more physical damage than I did to unlock the skill. So maybe I was only able to unlock it without a talent because of Gamer's body. / or you just haven't taken enough damage while in Izuka's party, / Cassandra said, / and it doesn't count when we don't have the indirect access to the gamer, / Either way, we all have it now, All Might said, and we may want to leave before any additional mooks or bosses find us. Exit dungeon. Tashinori Yagi dungeon progress. Defeated 20 enemies, +1 affinity. Defeated mid-boss, attribute balancing. What does this mean? All Might asked, as we all stared at the screen. Let me see, I mumbled. System. I immediately dove into the manual, and sure enough, there were 3 new entries. Okay, attribute balancing is simple enough, I explained. It adds 1 point each to your 3 lowest attributes, randomly picked in the case of a tie. Affinity gives you a bonus to 1 attribute or skill set. Specifically, a 5% growth bonus, and +1 latent boost to it. And a skill set? Mom prompted. Just what it sounds like, I answered. A set of related skills. Like the 5 math skills, or all the kung fu skills. / it would seem like an attribute affinity is a better choice, / Cassandra offered. Not necessarily. I shook my head. That latent boost isn't part of your actual stats. So in the case of skills, it is outside the normal limit, allowing you to get the skill higher than the usual maximum of 100, or 140 if it is limit broken. I'd say it is about even either way. What one are you going to pick, sensei? Tsu mused. All things considered, it seems like endurance is the way to go, he answered. I closed the dungeon window, and a second window appeared in front of Yagi-sensei. He hit the third option from the top, and the alert disappeared. All Might, your phone, Mom pointed out to him. The office phone on his desk was blinking. He lifted the receiver and hit a button. He listened, a frown growing ever deeper. Young Midoriya. He looked at me. The principal would like to speak with you. As soon as we are finished here. And he asked that you come alone. You asked to see me, sir? I said after knocking and opening the door. Ah, Midoriya-kun. The mouse, dog, bear, Principal Nezu smiled and hopped out of his chair. He padded over to me, just over half of my height. Thank you for coming, he told me. Of course, I agreed anxiously. Thanks mostly to Gamer's mind I wasn't panicking, but I still was wondering why he wanted to see me. I like to meet with my students, he rambled, leading me to chair by his desk, before retaking his own, elevated seat. Unfortunately, I don't always have the time, he continued, due to my responsibilities, both as the principal of UA, and to the larger community. And of course, you students are also so busy, trying to eke out some time to be children and have fun and friends, while still completing the curriculum. While I often wish I could be young again, I do not envy you. I silently thanked All Might for warning me about the principal's tendency to speak at length. However, that is not why I asked you here. He suddenly turned serious. Why did you want to see me? I asked evenly. About your power, and Toshinori-kun, Nezu answered. You see, he confirmed for me what I had already suspected. That you are an irregular. Toshinori-kun also told me that you think you can help him with his injuries. So, naturally, I have been considering your powers, and how you might do that. If you would indulge my speculation? And answer or confirm whatever you are comfortable with. I nodded. Your quirk is listed as tactile telekinesis, he said, and you have definitely exhibited that power amply. However, from everything I know about psionic types, the telekinetic discipline is not able to heal. It can help natural healing and keep injuries from getting worse by pulling flesh and bone back together. But restoring lost and already healed tissue? That is more in the realm of psychometabolism. Of the 4 disciplines. 5. I interjected automatically. 5? He prompted, a gleam in his eye. Psychokinesis. I started. The ability to move matter and energy. Telepathy, the ability to affect the mind. Clairsentience, the ability to know things. Psi-biology, the ability to affect cells and biological processes. And metapsionics, the ability to use effect psionics and other sorts of metaphysical powers. So I was correct, Nezu said. You are a rare, multidiscipline type psionic. To the point you have a power set even I was not aware of. I have started to learn telepathy and clairsentience. I offered without directly confirming or denying his theory. For me at least, psi-biology seems to be a combination of the first 3 disciplines, only with its own distinct spin on them. Telekinesis to move cells, he mused. Telepathy to stimulate them. And some form of microscopic clairvoyance to see what you are doing. Close, though not quite enough on its own, is that right? That is how it seems to me, I confirmed. Then I am guessing that, like other psi-biology users, you need a firm scientific grounding if you are going to use that power properly. Yes, I told him. He considered it for a moment. Then he addressed me regretfully. I don't think you have the requisite knowledge, he said directly, or that you would be able to learn enough about biology, chemistry, and human anatomy in the time frame you gave to Toshinori-kun. I have. I started to protest, but he held up a paw. I, on the other hand, am both much smarter than you, and have a stronger foundation of knowledge on which to begin building. Principal Nezu? I wasn't sure what he meant. I mean, he seemed to be offering to study medicine in my place. But what good would that do? There is a telepath I am aware of, he said. He lived almost 60 years ago, in Mexico. He had an ability he called skill share. He was able to use the skills of others and lend them his skills. Basically transfer the knowledge, without the baggage of memories. If you are a universal psion, you should be able to develop a similar power. I nodded thoughtfully. I propose you attempt to develop that power, Nezu explained, and the basics of psi biology, without worrying about the additional overhead of becoming a multiple disciplinary medical doctor as well. Then when we are both ready, we can combine our abilities to save the symbol of peace. What do you say? You would be willing to do that? I asked him optimistically. I could ask the same of you, he countered happily. Then his expression darkened. All Might cannot be allowed to die, for reasons far greater than what you are aware of. I didn't argue, suspecting the sort of information he was burdened with, especially if he already knew about people like me. I think it is a better idea, sir, I told him. Then I lifted out of my chair and offered a hand to him. He shook it. Then he frowned again, but this one looked more silly than dark. Now I just have to figure out how to get Recovery Girl on board, he pondered. Do you need me any more, sir? No, have a good evening, Midoriya-kun. She won't want to reopen already healed wounds. But she is the best nurse for the job, even before one considers her powers. I slipped out as quickly as I could, and was overcome with a sense of relief. The next day, Wednesday, our third Wednesday at UA, All Might was with 1B today, so for our Hero Essentials course, Aizawa-sensei had us redo the quirk apprehension test. 2.5 weeks might not have seemed like a lot, but we all noticeably improved our scores, even if the rankings didn't change much. That said, some of us had improved more than others. Cassandra, Sue, and I were getting more than a few looks from Aizawa-sensei as well as our classmates. After school, the study group met. And after that, as I got ready to leave campus, Sue having left early because of her sister's quirk headaches again, I was met by two welcome faces. Izuku-kun. Ami bowed slightly. Hi, Izuku, Ochako said happily. Ami, Ochako, I greeted them. Are you getting ready to go home? Actually, Mizuno countered. We were waiting for you. Really? I blinked. What for? We wanted to ask if we could start training with you, Ochako explained. All three of you. Training with us? I parroted uncertainly. You and Tsuyu have been working out together for months, Ami said. Almost a year if my memories and observations are correct. And since you started UA, Kane-sen appears to have joined your group. We were hoping you would have room for the two of us. If I removed All Might and Mom from the party, they could certainly join. But that wasn't what they were asking. We are all trying to be heroes, Ochako added. And while Ami and I have great quirks, we know that we both need to train our bodies more. And maybe learn some martial arts too. She pantomimed throwing a few quick punches, unknowingly illustrating how far she had to go. We will try not to slow you down too much, Ami said softly. I thought about it. Was I willing to trust these two with my secret? I was still getting to know them, but I strongly felt that I could. But what about All Might's secret? Though I suppose they could train with us, without telling them about his injuries. Or we could just do normal training, without the benefit of the gamer and dungeons. Like Sue and I had at first. But would the others object? And what about helping All Might, by clearing his dungeon and leveling him up? They seemed to take my silence as a no, Ami looking a bit defeated, and Ochako starting to fidget. If not, Uraraka suddenly said, maybe we could just all hang out together? Like the arcade, Makoto said she met you there. We're all friends, right? So we wanted to spend more time together. I looked at them suspiciously. Did you not really want to train? No, they both insisted immediately and in unison. Then Ami continued, we definitely want to become stronger. And we discussed approaching Aizawa-sensei if you said no. Ochako shivered. But to be honest, part of this, a fairly large part, is wanting to get to know you better, and to become friends with Kane-san. The Bluet concluded. That part sounds good to me, I reassured them. And training with beginners isn't always bad. Part of the reason masters teach is to make sure they don't forget the basics and pick up bad habits. I just hesitated, because it's not only my decision to make. But let me think about it, and talk to them. And I'll give you an answer on Friday at the latest. Is that okay? They both nodded. And in the meantime, I said, a bit of nervousness creeping in, I need to stop at the bookstore, they have another karate manual I ordered. Plus I need to get the new weekly Jump. Would you two maybe like to come too? Hang out and look at books for a while? Sure, Ochako agreed immediately. And Ami looked as happy as I would have been if someone had asked me to go to the new Avengers movie. So what do you think? I asked. Sue and Cassandra had already given their approval to any kind of training with Ami and Ochako, even if it meant mundane practice. Sue thought it would be good to tell them the whole truth, while Cassandra was neutral. All Might was also okay with cutting back one of the 3 or 4 days each week the 5 of us had been spending in dungeons. He was also up for bringing those 2 in and doing more normal workouts. Or even including them in our special workouts, if I agreed. Though he was not willing to tell them his secret until he knew them better. That just left Mom. She paused to consider. You said we should keep the number of people who know about the gamer small, and I agree. Telling them would bring it up to 7. Is that still small? On the other hand, I met Mizuno-san at the funeral, and I think you can trust her. I also understand you not wanting to keep secrets from your friends. And wanting to be fair if you agreed to train them. I know all too well what an advantage access to the gamer is. She smiled at me. Ultimately, it is your decision, Izuku. She put a comforting hand on my shoulder. I trust you to make the right one, and will stand by you either way. Thanks, Mom. I hugged her. I think I'll. Quest alert. A new fantastic point of view. Complete level 1 of Reflective Dungeon, Izuku Midoriya. Do so with a full party, not including any of the following: Inko Midoriya, Tsuyu Ezui, Toshinori Yagi / All Might, Cassandra Kane. Rewards. Talent? 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 Failure penalties. The reward talents are normally not available until higher levels and you must purchase them on your own. Feelings of guilt and a smaller circle of friends. Time limit 5 days. Accept decline. I apologize for not asking your opinion, mysterious power behind the gamer. I said sincerely. Then I hit accept. Trust and friendship are a beautiful thing. Charisma +1. Chapter 19. Hi, I said, my nerves not showing. Thank you all for coming. I was standing to one side of All Might's desk, the symbol of peace seated behind it. And standing between the desk and the door, showing varying degrees of confusion, anticipation, and worry, were Ami, Ochako, Mikoto, and Yayorozu-san. It was Thursday, after class let out. At lunch I had sent them each a text. I had the numbers of all of the core members of the study group, asking them to meet me here, and not tell anyone. Sure, Ochako said brightly, though her smile flickered. Of course, Ami nodded nervously. Sure, Mikoto also said, though there was an edge to her voice. But what's going on? Yayorozu didn't say anything, but her frown seemed to indicate she agreed with the electrokinetic. Yesterday, I answered. You two asked if you could join in our training? That is, me, Sue, and Cassandra, but also my mom, and sometimes All Might Sensei. Ochako's eyes widened, but the other 3 studied me more closely. Well, I wanted to ask if the four of you were interested in joining us. I continued, but quickly held up my hand to forestall them answering. Before you say anything, please let me finish. This training, it works for me, and for other people, which is why I am asking all four of you. But it is also a secret. Before you say yes, I have to ask you to promise not to tell anyone outside of the 9 of us about this. Then, Yayorozu's frown deepened. It's not anything illegal or immoral, I said, remembering her comment the first day of the study group. That's part of why I wanted you to come here. So All Might could vouch for me. It is true, he agreed loudly. I have been a party to Izuku's training method, and I can guarantee that it is entirely above board, if definitely unusual. Then why is it such a secret? Mikoto asked suspiciously. Well, I considered. If I told you my Wi-Fi password, there wouldn't be anything wrong with me having one or sharing it with my friends. But if you told a bunch of people, one of them might waste our bandwidth. Or worse, share it with someone else who would misuse it. She did that combination nod and shrug, indicating her understanding. But even if it is legal, I told them, it isn't entirely safe. We haven't had any major injuries yet, but we have all had at least some bumps and scrapes. Except my mom. There is always a chance someone could get really hurt. We could get hurt in class, Ami pointed out. Yeah, we are all studying to be heroes, Ochako agreed. If we were risk-averse, we would not be at UA. Yayorozu smiled for the first time, and Mikoto smirked confidently. Still, you should all think about this, I advised them. Consider it tonight if you are willing to keep this secret and undergo risky training. And if you decide you are interested, we can meet up tomorrow, and I'll tell you the rest. And give you a sample of it. Does that sound good to all of you? If you do wish to join in, All Might announced, you can return here school tomorrow. And please change into your costumes first, to save on time. The girls all started to leave. Except Ami. She stepped close, and gave me a determined look. It was both strangely fierce, given what I knew of her, and endearingly cute. Izuka-kun, she said, I don't need to think on it. I wanted to be stronger. I know I need that to become a hero, and I decided to do that. And like I said, I want to get to know you, and Tsuyu-chan and Kane-san better. Even if it is only you, that is still good. Then she whispered something I didn't catch. She bowed, and turned back to the others. The other 3 girls were giving her looks I couldn't quite read. What do you think it is? Momo asked Mikoto, though it was obvious the question was also directed at herself. Ami and Ochako had already split off, traveling in different directions. But Misaka and Yayorozu rode the same train, at least as far as the Doromundo Cast station. What is what? The shorter girl countered. Do you mean Ami's crush? No, this training. Momo shook her head. Secret training for Midoriya-kun +4. Honestly, Mikoto answered. I was thinking maybe a VR system. He mentioned his dad is a computer scientist, so maybe he got his son some experimental tech? But then why would we need our costumes? Momo argued. Familiarity? Mikoto shrugged, then added, do you have a better theory? I was thinking maybe they were going out as vigilantes, the black-haired lady said, and that the numbers limit was both so we would be harder to catch, and would have more direct experience. But I don't want to think that All Might would lie to us. Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow. Mikoto got in the last word, almost daring her classmate to back out. I wasn't surprised when all 4 of them chose to come. And all of them were already in their costumes, meaning they probably didn't come to decline. I was also in costume, and had brought a book, which sat on All Might's desk. My Christmas present from my dad, though it hadn't arrived until February. It was another programming textbook, this one about SQL. But it was also a skill book, so I could put it to use here. We're all here, Mikoto said. We all want in. And you promised to keep it secret? I prompted. To not talk to it with anyone who doesn't already know. Which would be the four of you, me, All Might, my mom, Tsuyu, and Cassandra? I promise, Yaoyorozu-san said firmly. Of course, Ochako agreed. Ami nodded. Yes, Mikoto sounded annoyed. We'll keep your secret. Okay, I sighed in relief. In that case, I decided it would be fastest to give you a quick trial run. Party disband. Party invite Mizuno Ami, Misaka Mikoto, Uraraka Ochako, Yaoyorozu Momo. They each reacted with varying levels of shock when the pop-up windows appeared in front of them. All Might looked amused, though he couldn't see the interface now that he was temporarily out of my party. Please press accept, he told them before I could. But it was probably more reassuring, coming from him. They all did, Mikoto aggressively, Yaoyorozu-san and Ami cautiously. And Ochako just hit the button. And me, I put my hand on the book. Create reflective dungeon. The book's dungeon was pretty shallow, only 40 total enemies. The terrain made it look like we were inside a computer, and the enemies were all insects, albeit insects with smooth black armor, highlighted by glowing lines of either aggressive red or sickly green. The regular enemies were mantises and beetles, while the mid-boss was a dragonfly. They were all about the same size as us, and only dropped cash. And their levels were only 12 or 13. The boss was a wasp the size of a small truck, and it was level 15. It also dropped a taser. As we went through the dungeon, I explained about my power, and the parts they had access to while in the party. I told them about how we fought enemies in dungeons, to both improve our skills normal, and to level up. At the start of the dungeon, Ochako and Ami were both level 11, and they increased to level 14. Mikoto had gone from level 15 to level 17. Since the first time I analyzed her, Yaoyorozu-san had increased to level 17. Inside the book, she and I each gained 1 level. When we exited the dungeon, I was a bit surprised. Firstly, because All Might had brought a small table into his office and 5 folding chairs. He had moved the book to the table, so we reappeared around it. Secondly, because my mom had arrived while we were in the dungeon. She was sitting in one of the normal chairs next to All Might's desk, and they were talking. Welcome back. All Might greeted us, bright and loud but also slightly worried. How did it go? I think it went good, I told him. The enemies weren't that tough, and Ami and Ochako managed to close the gap a bit. Everyone seemed to take it well. Take it well, he says. Mikoto grimaced. Even after experiencing it, it does seem a bit incredible. Yaoyorozu agreed. It was amazing, Ochako said, though the giant bugs were a bit creepy. I never imagined, Ami said softly. And what is the status of the skill book? All Might asked. Analyze. Structured Query Concepts I. A textbook explaining SQL code and design concepts. Durability, 39/40. Quality, 2/7. Rank plus. Rank bonus. Additional skill, Mathematics, Advanced. It went up 5 ranks like expected, I told him. And it looks like it will also improve one of my math skills too. Can we see it? Ami asked, fascinated. I touched the book again. This book contains the skills SQL coding, database design, and mathematics, advanced. Learning them will consume the book. Proceed with learning these skills? Accept, decline? I let them all look at the prompt, though Ami was the most interested. Then I hit accept, and the book disintegrated. That got a bit more of their attention. Skill book used. Mathematics, Advanced Skill Improved, LVL 5. Skills SQL Coding, LVL 1 unlocked. Skill Database Design, LVL 1 unlocked. Ami also looked at that screen. Then she sighed. Wishing you could do that too, Mikoto teased her gently. I don't know, the Bluette admitted. It does seem much easier. But I also like reading. So if you can only have 4 other people in your party, Yaoyorozu said, That means we will need to set up some sort of schedule and rotation for training. But I suppose we can consider that later. For today, I am not sure about the rest of you, but I could use a meal and some time to question the nature of reality. Actually, I countered her. There is one more thing we need to discuss, and one more thing we need to do. 2 more things to discuss, Mom added. Though I can wait until you are done, Izuku. Right, I guess I should introduce you. I realized. Everyone, this is my mom. Though I guess Ami, you have already met her. Mom, this is Yaoyorozu Momo, Misaka Mikoto, and Uraraka Ochako. I already know who Yaoyorozu-chan is, Mom admitted, but it is nice to meet all of you, and to see you again, Mizuno-chan. Thank you all for being friends with Izuku. Midoriya. Yaoyorozu-san seemed to realize something. You are the one who designed my costume. I didn't make the connection between Midoriya-san and Midoriya-kun. Yes, Mom nodded. And I wanted to take the chance to talk to you and Mizuno-chan about how you are finding your costumes. Especially since it looks like the company took some liberties with the original specifications. She was frowning and looking at Ami's chest as she said that. But after you are done, Izuku, she waved attention back to me. Right. I got nervous, wondering how they would react. Okay, the first thing is. I have to admit, I didn't reach out to the 4 of you for entirely altruistic reasons. What do you mean? Mikoto's eyes narrowed. I told you about quests. I reminded them. Well, on Wednesday I received one. To clear a certain dungeon, but without Sue, Mom, or anyone else who was in my party at the time. So that is the reason you asked us? Yaoyorozu looked hesitant. And now that we finished the dungeon. That skill book wasn't the dungeon, I told her. The dungeon is me. That shocked them. That first study group. Ami remembered. You said you were fighting in a dungeon in All Might. And that wasn't the only reason. I continued after nodding. I got the quest after Ami and Ochako asked if they could start training with us. And after Tsu and the others said they were okay with it. So I had already decided to invite you too. The quest made me realize that maybe I should go a little further, and yes, gave me an incentive to do so. I offered the spot to Mikoto because she is also already my friend. Then I looked directly at the black-haired girl and explained. Yaoyorozu-san, I asked you because I thought it was only fair that the last person was a member of the study group. And to be honest, I felt that you would be more likely to keep the secret than Hagakure-san or even Kyoka. And your quirk would be useful. But also, because I thought I wasn't as close with you as I am with them, and I thought this would be a chance for us to become better friends. Momo, she said. I grunted in confusion. Please call me Momo, Izuku-kun, she elaborated. Like Ochako, I know that my family name is a mouthful. And anyone who trusts me enough to let me literally into his soul, well, he can call me by my given name. Well, I guess if she's okay with it, I can forgive you too. Mikoto smirked. But I wonder, why didn't you just take your main party in and clear most of your dungeon? With All Might's help, it would have been easy, and then we could have just gone in and done clean up. We did think of that. I chuckled weakly. Right after I got the quest, actually. Spoiler, why don't we just go into your reflective dungeon? We could get a feel for it, and see who might be the best to invite. I expect you will still want to include Uraraka and Mizuno, but you may find Todoroki or Tokoemi would make things easier. I considered the text in our group chat, but another message came across before I could respond. Froppy, with All Might's help, we could just clear it all but the last boss. Then you and the new party would only have one fight. Symbol carrot piece. That sounds like a good plan. And it will give you some wiggle room to find a new group. Izuku-m, #spoiler. I think I should probably stick with the members of the study group. It is only fair, since they have been trying to figure out how we are getting better so fast. Plus, Mikoto was my friend before we started at UA, so I want to invite her too. Izuku-m, but yes, that is a good idea. Sue and Cassandra had joined us in All Might's office, after Ami and the others left to consider my offer. Mom was waiting at her job, rather than take the bus here. I considered it with a frown. How would I start my own reflective dungeon? I always touched the item, or shook All Might's hand. Should I hold my own hand? Well, we were teleporting inside me. And there was only one right pose for teleporting, so I would try that first. I raised my left hand, placing my pointer and middle fingers against my forehead, and curling the other two and my thumb into a partial fist. Create Reflective Dungeon. Warning: Reflective Dungeon Izuku Midoriya is currently designated for the quest A New Fantastic Point of View. Current party configuration does not meet quest requirements. If you proceed, the quest A New Fantastic Point of View will be cancelled and the rewards forfeited. Proceed? Accept, decline? I guess it's not that easy to game the system, I concluded. Pun intended. Good to know, the Electrokinetic said. So what was the other thing we needed to do? Ami asked me. I opened my inventory and dumped all of the cash I had collected onto the table. Then the taser. Count and divvy the loot. I smiled lightly. Wait, this is really real. Ochako's mouth glistened in the corner. Mom gave the money from the first dungeon to the police, I said. They returned it, so it isn't stolen or counterfeit. I also had my share tested, All Might added, after we went through the first pencil. I don't know where it comes from either, but it is completely legitimate Japanese legal tender. Except, I suppose, the American dollars that one enemy dropped. They were still real, just not Japanese. Ochako, who was sitting on the opposite side of the table from me, climbed up and onto it and grabbed my hands. Her right pupil as glowing yen and her left pupil a flashing. Izuku, would you ma? She trailed off, realizing where she was and how everyone was staring at her. She released me and clambered back into her seat. Sorry, she said meekly. What was that all about? Mikoto asked. I'm not a good person like you guys. I'm not here, not trying to become a hero, because I want to help people. Ochako looked deeply ashamed by her admission. Mikoto looked ready to say something, but Mom had crossed the room and touched her shoulder to stop her. My parents run a small construction company, Ochako told us. And well, things have been tough for a while. I offered to join the company to help. Use my power to help them transport materials cheaper. To save money on machinery and manpower. But my father, he thinks I didn't really want to. And maybe he is right. I want to help my family. But working in construction? I'm not sure. So, when I heard that heroes can make a lot of money, I thought, if I could become a famous pro, I could advertise for our company. Or just make money on merchandise to support them. And then when I saw this, 2,814,600 yen. We all looked at the pile of money. I was wondering if it was a guess or if she had really counted it that fast. I suspected everyone else was thinking roughly the same thing. For about 2 hours' work. I thought about 2 years ago, when my parents almost went bankrupt. And I went a bit crazy. But I want to do this, make money and support my family on my own. Not ride on Izuku's coattails. It's not wrong to want to have a stable life and support your family. Mom comforted her. I had similar thoughts when I found out about the money from Izuku's dungeons. I had stayed in a loveless marriage for years to make sure Izuku had a good life. I am willing to use his power as a backup if my job goes badly. But I am working hard so that doesn't happen. There are worse reasons to be a hero, Ami said softly. Trying to impress someone, trying to feel superior. There are heroes who want money and fame for themselves. And even worse, the ones who just do it so they can hurt villains. I don't think you're a bad person, Ochako, Momo said. And you can have half of my share. I would probably just spend it on myself. Mikoto nodded. But Ochako shook her head. No, like I said, I'm going to pull my own weight. Ochako paused and smiled in self-deprecation. Well, as much as that can be said when we're using Izuku's crazy power. Hey, we all signed up for this training, Mikoto countered. And give the possibilities it opens up, we could all say the same thing. But also have no right to complain. Okay. Mom clapped her hands. You three double-check Uraraka-chan's counts and divide up the money. Mizuno-chan, Yayorozu-chan, how are your costumes? How is the fit? Any new ideas for upgrades? Or design changes? Mom looked at Ami's chest again as she asked the last question. No, the blade said. It is fine. I was a bit annoyed at first, but the extra water storage has come in handy. I have noticed the zipper on my left upper arm tends to get stuck, Momo said. Yao. Momo, can I ask you something? I prompted. I don't mind, she said. I'm curious about your helmet, I said. Lots of heroes don't wear them, or try to make sure they don't hide their faces. That makes it easier to trust them since you can see their face, and makes it harder for villains to impersonate them. And it's better for marketing, Ochako said, tapping her own, more transparent headgear. Right, I agreed. So why is your helmet so heavy and concealing? Is it just defensive? No, she answered. She turned the helmet towards me, letting me look inside. The helmet does two things for me, Momo explained. First, it has 4 compartments that each store a protein shake. By hitting one of the buttons on the side, the straw extends to my mouth. That way I can replenish my reserves on the go. Also, the visor has a complex HUD. It can show both design schematics and molecular blueprints. To help me remember more complex things, or giving me the plans if I suddenly need to make something I'm not familiar with. Mom, meanwhile, had moved over to Momo and was checking the fastener that ended over her bicep. So, I called for their attention. The quest to clear my own dungeon only gave me 5 days. Time runs out Monday at about 6:15 p.m. And since I don't know how large the dungeon will be, I was hoping we could start early tomorrow. If it is like that book, we can probably clear it in the morning. But if it is anything like All Might's dungeon, it may take both days. Hopefully not any longer. They nodded, then Ochako took on a thoughtful expression. What is All Might's dungeon like? She queried. If you don't mind me asking? Of course not, our teacher boomed. So far, it has been limited to the campus of LU. And the entrance message said there are 240 total enemies, including 2 bosses and 7 mid-bosses. Dungeon entry Izuku Midoriya. Mooks, 97/97. Mid-bosses, 2 halves unspawned. Bosses, 1 out of 1 unspawned. This is a school? Momo half said, half asked. Aldera, Ami confirmed. Expect it's not, I added, looking around. You seem to mean that in more than the obvious way, Mikoto noted. The style matches, I explained. But there is no intersection like this. The only room at the end of a hall like that is the music room. But the hall would be much longer, Ami picked up for me. And we would be able to see the racetrack out those windows. So it is probably a random labyrinth-type dungeon. Mikoto showed off her gaming knowledge. With sections based on your middle school. Because that was a dramatic and dangerous time for you, Ochako said. Then when the other girls looked at her, quickly added, Sorry. No, you are probably right, I agreed. Then, key detection. I took a second to process what I sensed, then told them. It's not as good as an actual map, but since I can tell where the enemies are, it should help. Momo unzipped the panel over her right bicep and created a ball of thick, white string and a number of nails. The Theseus method then? She suggested. Ami and I both nodded. Momo tied 1 nail around the end of the thread and then handed it to Mikoto, who, in turn, shot it into the wall as an anchor. I'm pretty sure I get the idea, Ochako said. But what's a Theseus? I wasn't sure what to think of my dungeon. Like All Mights, the enemies were shadowy versions of my past antagonists. Well, with one notable exception so far, someone I definitely expected but hadn't seen yet. Longfingers and Kaken's other cronies. Other bullies who were not affiliated with them. One of my former neighbors who had always looked down on me and Mom, and her dog that always chased me. There was also the Moss villain, whose attack had forced Alderac to cancel a field trip in my first year. Killing the doppelgangers left me conflicted. I never wanted to hurt them physically. Except the time outside the arcade. And the mooks weren't real. Yet it was somewhat satisfying. Mid-boss has spawned. After we killed the first 29 mooks, a new alert appeared. Do you sense the mid-boss? Mikoto asked. I refocused my energy, reaching out again. Yes. He seems to be back in the second gymnasium we found, I reported. Should we go back fight him? Ochako asked. It is probably a good idea, Ami said, rather than waiting until we are more tired, or risking that the boss will move around, and he might attack us from behind when we are already engaged. The rest of us nodded, and so we turned back. Between Ami's memory and Momo's thread, it only took a few minutes to get back to the gym. I could sense the stronger key behind the doors I didn't remember closing. I had a strong suspicion of what we were going to find. I stood in front of the doors, ready to tank. Mikoto and Ami had hold of the handles with their respective powers, ready to push the doors in. And Momo and Ochako stood behind me, ready to follow me in. 3, 2. Mikoto counted down. Then they opened it. Deku! A familiar voice roared, even before I was through the door. He was in the Aldera summer uniform. He seemed shorter than I remember. But that was probably just because I was a little taller. No, he was the same. In fact, he was more like the real thing than any of the other opponents we had faced so far. Full-colored and sharp, focused expression. The others were like shadows, but if I hadn't known better, I would have thought it was really him. Bakugo Katsuki. My friend, exactly as he had been when I saw him in school, the day he was murdered. I'm gonna kill you, you shitty nerd! I flinched. I couldn't help it. Even though it had been a little over a year, it was a response to a decade of conditioning. It's okay, Izuka-kun. Ami's voice was gentle, but her expression was more stern than I had ever seen it before. I will take care of this. She stepped in front of the rest of us, even as a pair of small explosions propelled Kaken forward. She pointed her right hand at him, and a jet of water intercepted him. It wrapped around his head and shoulders, forming a solid ball of water. His legs jerked forward as the momentum of his upper half was abruptly stopped. She could have suffocated him, or enveloped him completely. But she instead left his nose and mouth free. Ami would later tell me she was worried that seeing him engulfed and unable to breathe would dredge up bad memories of the news coverage, mostly for me but also for her. But that wasn't the only reason. Do you recognize me, Bakugo-san? She asked, taking another step forward. Construct that you are, do you know? Brain bitch, he snarled. That's what you called me, she said. But you can see now that despite the rumors you spread and believed, my quirk was never what let me beat you. He put his hands next to the water holding him, and triggered his explosive power. Some of the liquid boiled off. Some of it was blasted away. Enough for him to break free. You're not better than me. Not you, not Deku, not anyone, he shouted as he charged her. I'll kill you both. Ami's eyes narrowed. She raised both her hands. Arrogant. Deluded. Self-righteous. Cruel. Aggressive. Impulsive. Bully. With each word, a water bullet kanonied at Kaken. After the first one sent him careening, he tried to counter. But his explosions only weakened the attacks. He couldn't stop them. And by the last word, the mid-boss was crouching on the floor, panting in pain. You were never better than me, she told him coldly. And neither one of us is as good as Izuka-kun. Then she hit him with a column of water, blasting him across the gym into a support beam. The mid-boss crumpled to the floor and disintegrated. Ami exhaled harshly. She turned back to us with a sheepish expression. "Well," she said, "that was cathartic." I silently agreed. "Hey, Ochako," Mikoto whispered loudly. "Remind me never to piss her off. And if I do, to apologize quickly and sincerely." "Oh, I would never have done that to the real Bakugo," Ami countered quickly and nervously. "The things he did was mean and wrong. But they weren't technically illegal, and certainly weren't worth killing for. But if you hated him so much..." Ochako remembered what we had mentioned in passing, and my mom had reminded her of yesterday. "Then why did you go to his funeral?" "While I hated him, and probably always will," Ami agreed, "I also respected the work he put into his studies, and felt bad for his parents. But mostly, I was just there to support Izuku. Though I didn't get a chance to talk to you." When she directed that last part at me, I thought she might be blushing. But it was hard to tell through her blue-tinted visor. "Well," I changed the subject, even as I pulled in the cash, and were those smoke grenades that Kaken had dropped. "Should we take a break and have an early lunch?" "That sounds good," Ami said. "Even though he was weaker than I might have expected, he still boiled off almost 30% of my reserves. I could use a recharge." "I agree," Momo added. "We are making good time, all the more reason not to press too hard." "Exit dungeon," I proclaimed. We returned to All Might's office. We chose to meet here again rather than go through the process of checking out our costumes. Mom and All Might were also there waiting for another experiment. Izuku Midoriya Dungeon Progress. Defeated 20 enemies, plus 1 affinity. Defeated mid-boss, attribute balancing. "So what happened?" I asked them excitedly, ignoring the prompt for the moment. "The 4 young ladies disappeared like usual," All Might answered. "However you, young Midoriya, did not." "I didn't?" I prompted in surprise. "No." Mom shook her head and looked slightly worried. "You just stayed frozen, sitting in that pose. And on top of that, you were translucent. I prodded your shoulder, and you were still solid, even if you didn't look it. But it looked like you were a ghost or a cheap hologram." "That's strange," I said thoughtfully. "Maybe since we were inside my dungeon, I still had to be out here. But because I was inside the dungeon, I couldn't be out here. I guess that wouldn't happen if we went into someone without that person being a member of the party." "Before we discuss that," Momo said with a hint of embarrassment, "could we order lunch first? I need to replenish." All Might smiled and picked up the phone. "Lunch rush, could you bring up the pizzas early? My students are taking their break now, and they are hungry." We ate and rested while telling Mom and All Might about the inside of my dungeon. Mom cringed when we told her Kaken was the first mid-boss, but I told her I was fine. Then I finally acknowledged the alert. Glancing at All Might, but also thinking about my own power and future, I assigned my new affinity to the telekinesis skill set, which covered all the skills from TK Basic, TK Intermediate, and Tactile TK, plus the Microkinesis, Megakinesis, and TK Advanced talents I didn't have yet. It was a lot of skills, and would help me qualify for the more advanced TK and also Psi Biology talents, many of which required a certain total of skill levels and other TK skills. I was thinking my second affinity would either go to Telepathy skill set or Clairvoyance skill set. I might have qualified for Psi Biology, Basic, but I wanted the intermediate level. And that required TP Intermediate, which in turn needed 50 levels of TP skills. TK Intermediate had also needed 50 levels in TK skills, but I was well past that point when I had purchased it on impulse after our first trip into All Might's dungeon. While I was considering all that, the other members of my party were going through their list of talents. We had each gained 1 more level, with Ami gaining a second one. I didn't know if that was because she had already been closer to level 15 than Ochako, or if she had received some sort of bonus for soloing Kaken. Or both, I guess. Either way, they all had at least one talent point open, and they discussed with themselves, and Mom and All Might, what they should buy. The general consensus was to focus on talents related to their quirks, which ended with each of them buying the second level of their quirk, and Ami and Momo choosing to save their second talent point, since they didn't qualify for the third level of their quirk yet. After returning, it didn't take us long to clear out the next 29 mooks, resulting in the second mid-boss spawning. Tracking his power led us to a hall we hadn't been down before, which ended in an exit door. Looking out the windows, we could see the baseball diamond. But that was not where we found ourselves when we stepped outside. We were on a beach, looking out over the ocean. But a depressing beach, covered with trash. And not just like food wrappers, but old appliances, industrial crates, and even an abandoned SUV. It wasn't even a smattering of garbage either, but piles taller than Momo. Dagoba Beach, Ami said sadly. I remember coming here when I was young. Then trash started washing ashore, and people starting dumping things they didn't want to pay to have hauled away or recycled. She trailed off as she saw him. Analyze, I said softly, not quite believing what I was seeing. Name, Izuku Deku Midoriya C. Another you, another path. Level, 25. Health, 950/950. Stamina, 833/780. Silence, 540/520. It's another Izuku? Ochako blinked. She looked at me. Then at the copy boss. Then back at me. He wasn't quite the same. He was a bit bulkier than I was, especially in the shoulders and biceps. His costume was different. It had the same green, but some sort of brackets won his sides for ornamentation, instead of the chevrons mine had. It was looser on him, and it was a bit disjointed. Red shoes and matching belt and pouches. Black knee and elbow pads. Whitish gloves with blue highlights, and pauldrons of almost the same color. What looked like a metal air filter in front of his neck and a hood hanging behind. The other me. Deku, I suppose, looked around at the beach. His expression was melancholy to begin with, but grew sadder with each pile of trash. Sadder, and a bit annoyed. Do we have to fight? I asked carefully, taking a step closer. His eyes locked on me angrily. Then he glanced at Ochako and Momo, and his expression softened. It seems like this place pisses you off, Mikoto noted, almost like it's personal. What if we cleaned it up? I asked Deku. He looked at me sternly. It took me 10 months, working almost every day, he said. Then he slumped and added, it was only 1 or 2 hours after school most days, but longer on weekends and vacations. Sure, it took me 1 whole day to move that washer out to the curb. Though that was really early on, he said defensively, and you only have just over 2 days for your quest. Drive too, I said. I picked up said washer with one hand, and a water heater sitting next to it with the other. I carried them over to the road at a brisk jog. I set them next to the door we had come out, now just sort of sitting on the sidewalk. Then I rejoined Deku and the rest of my party. It took me 30 seconds at most. Dungeon quest alert. A gentler path. Clean all the trash off the replica Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Rewards. Mid-boss bypass. Special party member bonus, equalizer. Failure penalties. Mid-boss attacks. Time limit 5 hours. Accept decline. 5 of us meant 2 months of his work, each. I had just done more than he had claimed in a fraction of the time. But there was really no way to calculate how quickly he improved, and thus what his average time would have been. It seemed like it might be doable. But it wasn't just me. I looked at my party, silently asking their opinion. I would rather not fight you, Ami said. Yes, this seems better, Ochako agreed. I'm curious what that bonus is, Mikoto said hungrily. If we fail, Momo offered a counterpoint. We will probably be tired when the other Zuko attacks. That said, I would also prefer to avoid fighting. And I do have volunteer experience. Okay, then, if we are all in agreement? I asked, my finger hovering over the accept button. Let's do it! Ochako shouted, jumping with her fist raised. Fortunately, this wasn't much of a shock, so this time I didn't accidentally hit the button. But the others nodded, so I pressed it intentionally. There was a pop of displaced air, as Dumpster appeared next to the water heater. At the same time, the 5-hour timer started counting down. Ochako, Ami, and Mikoto teamed up to do most of the heavy lifting. Zero gravity made the junk weightless, and then either Electromaster or ice water whisked it over to the dumpster. Anything we put in there just vanished, leaving it empty for the next discarded appliance. At the same time, Momo and I worked on the smaller stuff. She created a large sifter with her power, and also a couple of rakes for later. I would telekinetically lift a pile of sand into the sifter, and then we shook it until all the sand was gone, leaving only the trash. I would then run it over to the dumpster. And as we worked, we talked. So you have done something like this before? I asked in response to her last statement. Not exactly like this, she admitted, but my parents' company regularly organizes volunteer events. Reading to and playing with children abandoned because of their quirks. Handing out food and blankets to victims of villain attacks. But never a cleanup like this. That's really good, I told her brightly. We should do something like that in the real world. It seems like a shame if the real beach is like this. Maybe we could organize it at school. After all, being a hero isn't just about fighting. Doing our civic duty is also important. That sounds like an excellent idea. The tall girl looked very excited. It would be wonderful to spend more time with everyone. This might not mean much coming from a Todai graduate, Mikoto added. But you really are a sheltered princess, huh, Momo? Well, I never thought I was a princess, Momo blushed. However, it is true I haven't had many chances to make friends my own age in the past, so I might be a little overeager. I didn't have many friends either, I reassured her. Tsuyu was my first real friend, and Mikoto was my second. I was somewhat isolated in the past as well, Ami added. I had a few friends, Mikoto said, and one pest. But nothing like this. I don't think anyone's ever had a friend like this before, Ochako said, glancing at my doppelganger nervously. Not what I meant, Mikoto chuckled. But that too. No, I meant that most of my friends at Todai were more distant. Like they put me on a pedestal. Except Kuriko. She said that last part very quietly and shuddered. It didn't seem like the others heard her, so I let it go. If you do try to organize a cleanup event, Momo returned to the original subject, as the other three drifted away to deal with full-size delivery van that they had uncovered. Let me know. I will be happy to help set it up and participate. I'll do that, I told her. It only took us just over 4 hours to finish. Deku faced us with a pleased expression. Thank you, he told us. This is sort of a representation of my soul, I said. It only makes sense I'd want to keep it clean. We both chuckled weakly, and scratched the backs of our respective heads. The girls all gave us their respective styles of grins, and the mid-boss me faded away. Quest to gentler path complete. Mid-boss defeated. Party scrolls awarded. This time, the gamer didn't just leave the quest waiting on that screen for me to accept it. Instead, it triggered as Deku vanished, leaving behind 4 scrolls. So that's what it meant by equalizer, I noted, as I picked up the scrolls and handed them to each of my other party members. What's that mean? Mikoto prompted sharply, looking at the scroll dubiously. What is this? Ami asked, holding the scroll gingerly. Those are skill scrolls, I explained. It acts like a skill book, but only for one specific person who got it as a drop or quest reward in a reflective dungeon. I think. We haven't seen them anywhere else, and the flavor text seems to support that. Though this time the scroll's descriptions didn't have the complaint about the rules being broken. Did that mean I counted as a skill book? I guess I did give them access to their skills tab and the ability to mystically improve and even learn new skills. The last time we went into All Might's dungeon, Mom, Sue, Cassandra, and All Might each got one of those. I continued, the ladies unaware of my inner monologue. So it seems like the gamer wants you to have that skill, too. What skill? Ochako prompted. Physical resistance, I said. Truly? Momo looked at the scroll like it was made of gold. I nodded quickly and sincerely. I should warn you, using a skill book is mildly unpleasant. Ouch. I was cut off by Mikoto as she grimaced from using the scroll. Yes, that, I said in an understanding tone. We were all tired after the cleanup, but we managed to clear another 20 of the bully mooks. Then we decided to call it a night. The remaining 19 enemies will not be an issue, Momo reasoned. But we want to be at our best for the boss fight. I may not be as familiar with games as the rest of you, but I highly doubt we will be able to talk our way out of that fight. Who do you think it will be? Ochako asked, a blend of excited and nervous. Maybe All Might? I hope not, Mikoto grimaced. More like the 0-pointer. That was the last boss before Izuku got into UA. That would make sense, Ami agreed. I was thinking perhaps another instance of Bakugo-kun. But this time with the ability to summon minions. You just want to wail on him again. Mikoto smirked at the bluette. Actually, I wanted Izuku-kun to have a turn, Ami admitted, blushing. Izuku Midoriya Dungeon Progress. Defeated 40 enemies, plus 1 affinity. Defeated 60 enemies, plus 1 affinity. Defeated 80 enemies, plus 1 affinity. Defeated mid-boss, attribute balancing. I assigned the affinities to telepathy, clairvoyance, and key arts. Then, after promising to meet up again in All Might's office Sunday morning, though a bit later in the morning than we had met up today, Mom and I went home. What was your dungeon like, Izuku? Mom asked softly, once we were on the train. Aldera, I said simply. It looks like Aldera, and was full of bullies. Plus a version of me that I think represented a different way I could have spent my talents and skills. What about you? What did you and All Might talk about all day? Costumes, she said, sounding a bit evasive. And what it is like for him, teaching. And a bit about you, and the gamer, and if we ever considered going into my dungeon. After I finished the last mook, we got the message that the boss had spawned. I did a key scan. Then I frowned. What is it, Izuku-kun? Ami asked. I thought we had covered the entire maze, I answered, but it feels like the boss is above us. Secret passage? Mikoto suggested. Or a new path opened up, Ochako added. But that isn't all. Momo studied me. Which wasn't really fair, since we couldn't see her face. No, it isn't, I confirmed. This feeling. The boss is strong. But not only that, it feels spread out. Like maybe it is a larger sized boss. There's no way to know until we see it, Ochako said. She was trying to be energetic, but it was easy to see she was a bit shaken by my announcement. It's not like we are going to give up now, right? Mikoto pressed the point. Then let us get as close to being under the boss as we can, Momo agreed. And then see if we can find a way up. If nothing else, maybe Mikoto or Izuku can blast a hole in the roof, Ochako joked. Ami just listened, her lips pursed in thought. We backtracked our steps, following the string. And it didn't take long to see something that had definitely been there before. Stairs. In the same Aldera style as the rest of the dungeon. Leading up. At the top was the door leading up out onto the roof. Aldera, like most real schools and unlike most anime schools, did not allow students up there, so I didn't know what to expect. But it was a stereotypical broad, flat, tiled roof with a link fence around it. We tapped the door open to get a look at the boss, hoping we wouldn't be noticed. The Deku doppelganger was waiting for us, though this time I saw he had metal plates on the front of his sneakers. Besides that, he looked at his partner apprehensively. And with him was Kaken. But unlike the Bakugo Katsuki, age 14, elder uniform Ami had fought, this one appeared to be about our age. He was a few centimeters taller, and like my copy, a bit more ripped. And he had on some sort of costume. He had a black and orange shirt, and black pants with a green belt and garters. His face was partially covered by an explosion-patterned domino mask and an explosion-patterned pair of fins out of the back of his neck for some reason. He also had a metal neck brace, and heavy boots with metal kneecaps. Finally, he had a bulbous, grenade-like device on each of his wrists. Analyze. Name, Izuku Deku Midori SD. Another you, another path. Level, 22. Health, 860/860. Stamina, 678/690. Psions, 460/460. Name, Katsuki Bakugo C. What could have been? Level, 22. Health, 923/924. Stamina, 650/650. Ki 550/575. So for a strategy, I began, my voice catching a bit. How would all of you feel about beating me up? Not me. The boss, me. Izuku, you are my friend. Mikoto laid a comforting hand on my arm. But I'm still more than a little angry about the whole will I make it in, oops, no, I stole the top spot thing. So I will have no trouble blasting that copy. It's not really you, Ochako said nervously. I guess that means I can fight it. Ami looked even more unsure. What are you thinking? Momo queried. Well, I'm thinking that unless that is some unexpectedly crazy version of him, I know what Bakugo-kun can do. And what he will do, which is attack me immediately. But I also know his powers, and how he normally fights. So I think I can handle him. Plus, like Ami said, I kind of want to. But the other me, we don't know what he can do. Is he similar to me? A pure telekinesis build? Pure ki? Or even a telepathy build? He looks like he might be a pure physical build, but we can't count on that. That's why I'm thinking this. I will take on the Bakugo half of the boss. The three of you take on Deku, but carefully. And Ami hangs back to provide support for the rest of us. Since her water can be used both to attack and block, Momo nodded. And for the uncertain copy of you, numbers and the variety of our powers should help overcome that. It's a solid plan. The other three ladies all indicated they were in. So after giving Momo a second to generate a titanium combat knife and buckler duo, we stepped onto the roof. What the fuck is this? Bakugo roared before anyone else could react. 2 Dekus? And that one broad ponytail and round face with him? And who are these other extras? Damn it! Then with a pair of predicted explosion, he jetted straight at me. Drive 4. Asgard Smash! The hell? Bakugo complained as the ball of ki slammed into his chest. But even though his HP dropped by 33, he didn't stop or even slow. His posture was the same as always, telegraphing a leading right. But no, he was playing it up too much. He wanted me to think his first blow would be a right cross. He had something else in mind. I wondered if someone else had exploited that tendency of his. His right hand did shoot forward. But when I swung my arm up to block his punch, he loosened his fist and double-tapped his palm. Out of the nozzle over his wrist, a cloud of fire bloomed. -15 health, -10 energy. I had tweaked the alerts to also show how much energy TK armor consumed in reducing the damage I took. The explosion stopped Bakugo. Then he pointed his left hand down and to the side. The next, smaller explosion rotated his body, and he launched a knee at my face. He seemed surprised when I caught it on my arm and forced him back, only losing a little energy in the process. Then I buried my fist deep in his gut, comboing the punch into a Hogwarts Smash, as I had renamed my Broadway Smash. The telekinetic attack used him instead of a rock or knife. He was too heavy to be an effective projectile, at least with my current abilities. So he didn't go flying, but was sent tumbling, his face scraping on the tiles. Deku was faring a bit better. He was noticeably faster and stronger than me, some sort of reddish energy crackling over his body. My party members were holding their own. Mikoto had joined Momo, and was using a sword made out of vibrating iron sand. Neither of them had been able to connect yet, but their blades were keeping him on his toes. Though that was also literally true because at some point Ochako had tagged him. Without gravity, he was having trouble getting a good purchase. Even so, the only reason he hadn't been able to knock out at least one of Momo or Mikoto was that Ami was focusing solely on them for the time being. He smashed her water bullets, but was forced to pay attention to them, or be knocked off balance, and give one of the melee attackers an opening. "What the fuck are you?" Bakugo demanded, regaining his feet. "You look and sound like Deku, but you don't fight like him. What's with all this Street Fighter shit?" He was fighting better than I remembered. So was the other me. But neither of them held a candle to Cassandra or Ojiro-san. Even Tsu and I, and now Momo from what I had seen since Friday, were far more skilled than they were. But they seemed to have more practical experience. Which made sense since they were both higher level than any of us. And I was even less sure of Deku's build. Bakugo launched into a series of punches and kicks, each one paired with a small explosion. The bursts were not meant to seriously hurt me. Instead, he wanted minor burns and battery, and mostly to limit my movement. Then he dropped both hands down. Twin blasts launched him up like a rocket. He knee slammed me face, rattling my brain a bit. If my health had been any lower, that probably would have broken my nose. I grabbed his leg before he could sail past me. I turned into a shoulder throw, but because he was airborne and I was swinging him at basically full extension, it wasn't quite as gentle as I wanted. His head smacked the tiles hard. He rolled over and pointed one of grenades at me. "Die, shitty nerd!" Boom! Bang! He reached up for the pin. I braced myself and started to form a TK rampart between us. But before he could fire, I heard a different loud sound, namely a sonic boom. Then the device exploded, the nitroglycerin inside triggered by the impact. I spared a glance for the other fight, and a nod for Mikoto. Deku was currently engulfed by one of Momo's smoke bombs. He also was no longer weightless. Momo had switched to a staff, after her dagger and also a hatchet had been broken. The steel pole rested against the crook of her arm as she unzipped the panel over her stomach. She created a pair of flashbangs, and tossed them into the cloud. She then zipped shut and resumed her fighting stance. It seemed Bakugo's grenades bracers were designed to be safer than their shape implied. They didn't produce any shrapnel, and the underside was reinforced so his wrist was blown off. But his face, upper arm, and hand were all scorched. "Damn it, you Bairi bitch!" he shouted. "Stay out of my fight, you damn extra!" "Right back at you!" she snarled. "Izuku, stop holding back and finish this idiot, so you can help us over here." Then she grabbed her weapon with both hands. My double shot out of the smoke, and Mikoto barely avoided getting hit by blocking. Deku stopped short, so he didn't lose a finger or two to the sword-shaped vibrating cloud of iron. Even with him hesitating, the force of the blow caused the particles to heavily distort and pushed Mikoto away. I considered Mikoto's words. Was I holding back? "Is that right, Deku?" Bakugo's voice was low, dark, and oddly calm. "Are you holding back?" Part of me, a big part, wanted to apologize. It had been drilled, even beaten into, until it was almost instinctual. To kowtow to Kaken, especially when he got so livid he didn't seem angry anymore. Part of me wanted to explain. To tell him Gundor's smash probably wouldn't hurt him any more than Asgard's smash. And that layering key reinforcement would hurt me, too. Part of me wanted to tell him off, that it wasn't his business, and he couldn't call me Deku anymore. No. You resisted your old fears. Determination +1. Congratulations. Determination has reached peak human tier. Please select a bonus talent. Nerves of Steel. Fear resistance from gamer's mind is upgrade to fear immunity. Focus, key projection. Improves efficiency for key projection and derived skills. Focus, key regeneration. Improves efficiency for key regeneration and derived skills. Bakugo was twitching, so I didn't have time to think or analyze them. And if I just let the window wait, I might accidentally press 1. So I hit the panel for focus, key regeneration, even as I brought my arms up. Double Gundor Smash! I swung down a pair of knife hands in an X, sending off arcs of sharpened ki. Then I immediately punched out, declaring, Asgard Smash! You bastard! Bakugo roared. He unleashed a giant explosion from his surviving bracer. It completely engulfed my 3 attacks, and continued on, hitting me. -90 health, -60 energy. The blast threw me into fence around the roof. The combination of the 2 hits took a huge chunk of my health, and if not for my TK armor's defense, it probably would have dropped me below half health. But at the same time, it looked like I was wrong. While the explosion had destroyed my Asgard Smash, the concentrated edges of the Gundor Smashes had cut through his attack, and deep into his chest. Bakugo was bleeding heavily, but he still had between 25 and 30% of his HP left. I drew myself up. I just honestly didn't think that would work any better. Heh, he panted. I don't know what you are, you shitty nerd. But I'm not going to lose to you again. He rocketed forward again. But without his grenade, he was limited to weaker, sputtering bursts with his right hand. He was moving slower, and off balance. I never beat you before, Bakugo, I told him. And what am I? I'm the one who will fulfill both of our dreams. I timed it out, and stepped in. And I'm sorry, Kakin, I said. But that means I have to beat you here before me now, to do it. I threw an uppercut, not at his chin, but at his throat. There was a sickening crunch. He was still moving forward, and crashed into me. Except it was solely momentum, and I wasn't knocked down. I set him gently aside. Damn it, Deku! He wheezed weakly. Then he vanished in a small explosion, leaving behind a stack of bills and a small, ruby-like gem. Analyze. Medium fire jewel. Once again I received the nondescript alert. And sure enough, the instant I touched it, it vanished. I dropped the money into my inventory with the rest, and turned to the other fight. I said tentatively, not wanting to insult or annoy them. Mikoto, you complained about me, but despite the initial plan, it has been all 4 of you focusing on this guy, and he's in better shape than Bakugo was when you told me to stop holding back. We haven't been focusing on him. She shot back sharply. Since we've been keeping half an eye on you. We were worried you would not be able to go through with fighting Bakugo-kun's copy, Ami added softly. Plus, this guy's a lot faster and stronger than you are, Ochako added. Well, it looks like you have a plan ready, I noted. Deku frowned. What? He asked. Since you are a reflection of my soul, please take this lesson back with you, I told me kindly. Because I know it is a mistake I make too, despite knowing better. People never think to look up and rarely remember to look down. His eyes widened, and his gaze shifted skyward. Floating above him was a cloud of metal shards. The remains of Momo's various weapons he had broken or disarmed her of during the fight. Made weightless by Ochako, who clapped her hands together. Izuku, please cover the northwest quadrant, Ami requested quickly. I conjured a telekinetic rampart at her requested angle behind Deku. She created a water wall to the southwest. That left him only one way to go. East, towards us and the densest part of the cloud of raining steel, copper, and titanium. Unable to evade it, the boss looked up. His hands began to flash, punching the shards to shatter them, knocking others away with the shockwaves. Despite that, some of the fragments hit him, and his HP chipped down. Ochako was right. Even with both my enhancement powers and key reinforcement devoted to only strength or quickness, he would have been well above me. And it didn't seem like he was going all out. Once the rain of metal ended, he faced us. There was a nasty cut on his left cheek, and the chest and arms of his costume were cut to ribbons, the skin underneath less damaged but still bloody. He looked angry. But I just gave him a sad smile and pointed down. His anger changed mostly to resignation, and he looked at his feet. The majority of Ami's water reserves had been used during the fight. Plus, I think Momo might have contributed some too. The result was that the entire roof was covered in a 3-centimeter deep puddle. Except, thanks to ice water, for 5 bone-dry ovals. One around the feet of each party member. And on top of just the water, he was now surrounded by a scrapyard of conductive material. Mikoto dropped to one knee and placed the first 2 fingers of each hand just above the water. Current shot out. With barely any interference from Electromaster, it arced towards him. Deku's body went rigid as millions of volts flowed through him. His teeth clenched so hard I was surprised they didn't crack. A high, groaning whine escaped his lips, almost like a whistling kettle. 3 seconds later, Mikoto broke off. She stood again, exhaling harshly. A quick check showed that her psions were almost entirely spent. She might have 1 or 2 more attacks left, but nothing of that magnitude. Their combo had dropped Deku down to a quarter of his starting health, but he definitely wasn't done. Instead, he gave us a look of renewed determination. "Full cowling, 50%, he announced. The red-purple lines on his body both spread and grew brighter. Then he moved. "Key reinforcement, endurance and quickness," I barked. He was so much faster than before I didn't think I would be able to tracking him without the boost to my speed. And I split it with endurance, hoping that would keep the merged ki and psionics from hurting me too badly. -1 health. I wouldn't be able to fight him physically, but I could at least keep up with him. Still, jerking my neck and torso around was hurting. I also noticed that the same appeared true. Full cowling was draining both psions and stamina from Deku, so I couldn't be sure what kind of power it was. Whatever it was, it hurt him slightly every time he moved. He must have been hoping to take us out, before he defeated himself. As fast as he was, there was still a latency of brain to muscles, and my telekinesis was basically instant. When he stopped circling, and moved into attack, I conjured another rampart, this one in his path. Deku smashed through it like glass, barely slowing down. But slow he did. That gave Momo a chance to throw a pellet of some sort in his path. I was expecting an alkali metal or something else that would explode. Instead, whatever it was caused a rather extreme endothermic reaction. There was spray of mist, and the boss's next step landed on smooth and solid ice. His foot slid forward, dropping him into a painful splits on the 4-meter circle of ice now covering the ground around him. I heard a sharp crack I thought might have been one of his bones. Instead, it was from the ice itself. Hundreds of small needles of ice broke off from the main mass and flew up, impaling him, making him look like an instruction model for acupuncture. Only these needles went deeper. He shivered, but was also bleeding profusely. Deku tried to stand, but between his injuries, and Ami returning the ice to its flattest and slickest, he couldn't. I stepped closer, a ball of ki forming in my hand. Mikoto did the same. She held up one of her discs, and Ochako tapped it. "You are going to becoming the #1 hero?" he asked me, smiling. "That's the plan," I said humbly. "With a little help from my friends." He nodded, and we reduced his HP to 0. Izuku Midoriya dungeon complete. Defeated 100 enemies, plus 1 affinity. Defeated boss, bonus random talent. Level 1 cleared, bonus random talent. The other me dropped some more money in a medium light jewel. After exiting and splitting the money, the 5 of us, plus All Might, took a break and ate lunch. To wait for Mom, Sue, and Cassandra. The 3 of them had also come to campus, wanting to see the results of clearing my dungeon, and of the quest that had led to the second party. "So what was the boss?" Sue asked as soon as she entered All Might's office. "It was a strange version of Izuku," Ochako told them, "and a villain version of the Bakugo Katsuki who was the mid-boss." "Actually," I said sheepishly, "I think that was what Kaken would have been like if he had made it into UA." Ami nodded, and Mom looked thoughtful. "So then," All Might boomed, "it appears the rewards for defeating the boss and clearing the first level are both random talents." "Let's see what you get," Ochako said anxiously. I hit the window, and then assigned my 5th affinity to intuition, since that was tied to my psychic abilities. "Congratulations. Boss defeated in your reflective dungeon. Please select a bonus talent." Query Expert. Improves efficiency for SQL coding. Focus, Key Projection. Improves efficiency for key projection and derived skills. "That's easy." I picked the second one. "It is interesting that you only had 2 choices," Sue noted, "when I had 3. Actually, I remembered I hadn't told them. I also hit 50 determination fighting Bakugo, and that gave me 3 options. I took Key Regeneration Focus, since it applies to Key Healing too, but the Key Projection one was also offered. The next window for the level 1 clear also only offered me 2 skills. I took Sidestep over Tough as Nails, but it was a difficult choice. In the end, I decided Mom was right, and improving my dodging ability was better. Now for the big one. Mikoto smirked. The quest that got us 4 into this. Quest a new fantastic point of view complete. Claim the rewards? Accept decline? Bonus talents received. Party Leader 2 unlocked. Inventory 3 unlocked. Reflective Dungeon 2 unlocked. Guild Master I unlocked. Whoa. I didn't clearly catch which lady said that. I was so engrossed in the list of gamer talents. Party Leader 2 was simple enough. I could add a 6th person to my party. I immediately added Sue to test, and members of my party gained 5% more combat XP. Also, the party could talk telepathically. But it was an all or nothing, like shouting. If we used party chat, everyone in the party would hear it. Inventory 3 was slightly more complicated. It added 1 more column, increasing my box to 3 by 6. It also added a wallet function, so money didn't take up a grid slot, and I could see exactly how much I had stored. And finally, it added equipping of party members. I flipped over to the party tab, and sure enough, each party member's information now had a paper doll next to it, like mine on the inventory tab. Fortunately, the equipment displays also had those side arrows to collapse them, which I quickly did without looking at what they were wearing. Reflective Dungeon 2 got a bit more of a reaction. It said that we could now delve into the second level of a dungeon, if there was one. But more importantly, time dilation? I gaped at it. Ami looked similarly struck. Does that mean what I think it does? Momo asked. When my party enters a dungeon, I switched to the System tab, called up the manual, and summarized. I can choose to have time pass normally, or at double the normal rate. So 2 hours in a dungeon would only be 1 hour in the real world. And we still age at the normal rate. I know there are some quirks that affect time, Ami said odd, but they are extremely rare and powerful, and give physicists migraines and nightmares. Now you have a power that can simultaneously alter the flow of time and leave it alone? May it is just our perception of time? I suggested, increasing our movement and thinking speeds, without actually changing our cellular mitosis rate? Maybe? But then how would the accelerate metab? Forget the hyperbolic time chamber for a minute, eggheads, Mikoto ordered. What's up with this guild? There was a new tab on my menu, guild. It might be a bit faster to show you, I decided. Guild invite, Midoriya Inko, Azuritsuyu, Kane Cassandra, All Might, Mizuno Ami, Misaka Mikoto, Uraraka Ochako, Yayoro Zumomo. The 8 screens popped up, and they all hit accept. Well now, All Might rumbled. Right, for all of you, you have access to the stats, skills, and talents tabs, even when you aren't in my party. Also, I guess the guild tab, if that wasn't obvious. But not the party tab unless you are in the party, and verse Vika. For me, I can invite a guild member into my party, even if I don't have line of sight on them. There's also a guild chat, which is like party chat, but with the whole guild. And it looks like I can have up to 12 people in the guild, including myself. Wow! What's this? Ochako exclaimed in disbelief. 1 billion yen? 1 billion? I glanced down on the tab. Sue mumbled. Sure enough, there was a guild hall option. It would let me convert an item's reflective dungeon, but not a person's, into a guild hall. Then any member of the guild could jump to the guild hall from anywhere. But they could only exit to the real-world location of the item itself. Plus, according to a quick glance at the manual, additional guild perks including guild hall upgrades may be unlocked for purchase when additional qualifications are met. The downside was the guild hall cost, 1 billion yen. Plus the item had to be at least 3 levels deep and the first 2 had to be cleared. So I probably wouldn't have that for a while. Even if I could find a dungeon that reliably dropped 10 million yen, and that I could safely solo, I'd still have to clear 100 of them. / who else are you going to invite? / Cassandra asked, and Sue translated for the others. / you still have 3 open slots. / Momo called up her window, and dropped some skill points into JSL. Ami, Mikoto, and Ochako followed suit. Wait, Cassandra, I said silently, if we have guild chat then. I can talk to you, she responded. Her current tone was cautious and anxious. But her mental voice was gentle and melodious. Then her face lit up, and she teared up a little. I can talk to you, she said certainly, happily. Mom placed a hand on hers. As to your question, Kane-san, Momo said, still in the guild chat, I would suggest inviting Kyoka. I remember what you said on Friday, Ami picked up, and I agree with what you said about Hagakure-san seeming talkative and flighty. Though I think she would not betray you. But I agree that Kyoka-chan can be trusted. I'll think about, and try to talk to her some more. I think we need to think of a name for the guild, Sue commented, pointing to the blank spot at the top of the tab. Phew, that was intense, right? Part 4 of What If Deku Had the Gamer Powers? Was absolutely mind-blowing. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts, fan theories, and what you'd like to see next down in the comments. Your ideas might just shape the future of this series. If you were as hyped as I was, show some love by smashing that like button, sharing this video, and spreading the word. And if you haven't joined our incredible community yet, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and become a part of our fantastic journey. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming up. Once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being the best audience ever. Your support means everything, and it drives us to create content that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, this is Chronos, signing off. Catch you in the next video, my awesome friends.